The NFL draft is over. It's Monday, which means no more mock drafts. We get to actually talk about the players the Steelers picked. We'll start with Kenny Pickett. Will he start? Big questions. All the things you want to know right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm Chris Carter. Let's get into
it. You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on this video if you're enjoying it. Hit the subscribe button to our YouTube channel to get all of our daily updates, as well as our daily Monday through Friday episodes, our breaking news updates whenever they happen, and our bonus episodes when we get time to release them. If you want to help out the show, give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts with a positive comment, and you'll get a shout out at the end of the show. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. And today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the place to go whenever you need your season covered, whenever you need to learn about props, odds, or lines. All of it available better than ever before at BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, as I said, it's NFL draft time. Well, it's been NFL draft time. It's time to evaluate how they did. And if you missed any of it, if you were too caught up in the NFL draft madness or you had things to do during the weekend, I broke down each of the days over the weekend, both on audio with Apple, Spotify, all of those, and then also on video on YouTube. So if you missed any of my initial breakdowns, go back and check them out. They're all there for you. But now we're taking the next step and looking at these guys in a long-term sense, in a more full sense, to say, okay, now we've let it settle in a little bit. We've heard them speak now. And first, we are going to start with Kenny Pickett, because the question that everyone's asked me, and I've already been on like several other shows going around. I'll be on Behind the Steel Curtain over the weekend. Kevin Ostreicher brought me on the Locked On NFL podcast, the Monday edition, to talk about this. And I'm sure it will be the talking point going into training camp, all through training camp, because it always will be, will Kenny Pickett earn the starting job? That's an interesting question. Here's the thing. I don't think you're crazy if you think that he will. I don't think it's he's the favorite. If I were to break it down, I would say I'd give a sort of, I guess, a 40% chance to Mitch Trubisky, a 35% chance to Kenny Pickett, and what's the remainder of that in 100? 40 plus 35 equals 75, which means 25% goes to Mitch Trubisky. Take that, math. I figured you out. Anyways, our next Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, excuse me. You know what I mean. But point is, I'm not good at math, but I am good at watching football and studying it. And Mitch Trubisky is going to have a leg up, I think, because he's going to have the bigger arm. He's going to have the experience in the NFL. And again, I put Mason Rudolph not too far behind them. I edge Mitch Trubisky over Kenny Pickett, but I put Mason Rudolph right in that mix because he still does know the playbook. He's been there for some time. You know, this isn't a new rodeo for Mason Rudolph. He's been with Matt Canada for 2 years now, because Canada was the quarterback's coach before he was the offensive coordinator. And he's been in the Steelers locker room, so he knows the deal there. Mitch Trubisky coming in, a former second overall pick, a guy who's been with the Bears and was a backup on the Bills. He's going to be coming in, and I give him the edge immediately. But I put Kenny Pickett right there because they didn't draft this guy at 20 just for him to be the third guy on the depth chart. They didn't draft him at 20 so that he would never play. I think this is a matter of how ready do they think Kenny Pickett is feeling. Now, reasonable questions that you might be asking as a fan or a listener, a person who's just here to figure out what's going on with Kenny Pickett or what will happen. Reasonable questions. Will Kenny Pickett, will it be a lot of pressure on Kenny Pickett because he's in Pittsburgh and that's where he played college, and there's going to be all this pressure on him to be the next Ben Roethlisberger? Will that impact him? Shouldn't they just let him sit back? Shouldn't they let him be the backup for a little bit so that he can kind of acclimate to the NFL? One of the biggest things that I've always seen about Kenny Pickett is that he loves the big moments. He loves the bright lights. He loves to step up in the moment and be the guy. And he also likes the drama a little bit. And not drama as in like, locker room gossip or causing trouble, but like when a big game is in a big moment, he loves to be the guy in the moment to make the big play. And again, that's not a negative thing at all. That's a very positive thing. And I think that's a big factor why Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert were so big on Kenny Pickett. I ask you to think about this past season with Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger, this was the worst. That was the worst season of his career. He was not good. Didn't have the arm, didn't have the mobility. He was very limited. But when was Ben Roethlisberger at his best last season? It was in the clutch moments, because that's one factor that wasn't gone from Ben Roethlisberger. That's a factor that age didn't remove from him, was that he loved the big moments. He loved being the hero. And in the big moments, he would stay calm, cool, collected, and ready to make the big play. While many players in the NFL, and this is a unique trait, there is a clutch gene. I don't know what it is. No one knows what it is, but there is a factor of there are players out there who can make plays in the biggest moments, and players out there who let the game get to them. They start thinking too fast, and they make mistakes that they normally wouldn't make. It's just part of sports. You've seen it all the time. Ben Roethlisberger, that was his MO. Even when he was having bad days, 2-minute drill time, he could turn it on. And that's what he did a lot of last season when the Steelers needed him late in games after the defense was really the team they carry them to the finish line, and they just need him to get them over the hump, or just need him to just convert a couple first downs, get the game over, and that's how they were able to win some of their games. That's something that I think Kenny Pickett has. There's so many times when I was covering him at Pitt. Again, I covered Kenny Pickett for the last 2 years, and I've watched him because I'm a Pittsburgh guy. I grew up, born and raised in Pittsburgh, so I've always had an interest in. I wanted to see the Pitt Panthers. I grew up watching him. As a kid, I watched Larry Fitzgerald. I've seen that program go through a lot, and there were several times when the game was on the line. If the ball was in Kenny's hands, he was doing something. He was going to make a big play. They trusted him, and he earned that trust, and he seemed to revel in it. So I don't think that the pressure of this is going to be anything that limits Kenny Pickett. The one thing that I think is going to happen there is that he's going to have to adjust. He's going to have to learn the playbook. He's going to have to, take on time to get used to playing with NFL talent. And I think those are things that he will adjust to. But initially in training camp, that's where Trubisky and Rudolph will have their edges. They'll be able to say, "Hey, we know what it's like day in and day out. We've been on this rodeo before, and it'll be an interesting camp battle." And again, I put all three in this conversation. I wouldn't eliminate Mason Rudolph altogether. I don't think that he will be the guy that starts. All I'm saying is that I've seen weirder things happen in training camp. But that being said, I would say that Kenny Pickett stands a decent chance to start this next season. Maybe not day one, but eventually down the line, I think he starts to get some chances. And it'll be really interesting to see with Mitch Trubisky, say him or Mason Rudolph earn the starting spot. Say they're doing really well. What do you do then? But say they're doing really poorly. Do you get into a position where the Ravens were with Lamar Jackson and Joe Flacco? And remember when Lamar Jackson was first drafted, he sat on the bench. Joe Flacco was playing terrible. They pulled him late in the season when they thought the year was over, and it was pretty much the worst kept secret in the NFL that John Harbaugh was about to be out of the Baltimore Ravens. And then Lamar Jackson sends them on this crazy tear, and then they're in the playoffs, and then, oh my goodness, John Harbaugh's sticking around because he's got Lamar Jackson. And I'm not saying Kenny Pickett, that's the path for Kenny Pickett to start, but I am saying there's a lot of different scenarios the way this could play out. So don't lock yourself into any one of them, but do take a look-see at what the quarterback position will be looking like in training camp, because I do think that the Steelers have an interesting competition coming on their hands. If Kenny Pickett wins it, I think it will be because of his accuracy. I think it'll be because of his ability to see the field and react to defenses. But I think part of that is also understanding how quicker a defense reacts. We'll get into my thoughts about this quarterback battle in just a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, because this is a very important factor here. But first, we got to talk to you guys about betonline.net. BetOnline, y'all know it's the place where you go when you want to put some money down and learn about who to put money down on when you're betting on sports. It's your number one sports source for all your betting stats and information. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of Major League Baseball this season. With the playoffs underway in NBA, it's round 2, so that's exciting. Major League Baseball's one away, and the Stanley Cup playoffs are here. So where to get all your information? Go to betonline.net. BetOnline's your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today. You use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, continuing our first Monday after the NFL draft. I want to finish up some thoughts on Kenny Pickett before we get to my next topic. When I talk about the adjustment period, I don't think that Kenny Pickett's going to need the seriousness of the pro level. That's not the adjustment, but there's going to be a timing factor. He's going to be used to college wide receivers and the way that they get open, and college defensive backs and the way that they can make plays. In the NFL, defensive backs are going to be quicker, faster, bigger, smarter. They're going to be there's going to be a lot. The window for errors are so much smaller. That's what you hear when you hear people talk about throwing to college open wide receivers versus NFL open wide receivers. The amount of space that's often available to college quarterbacks to hit the passing window is usually a lot larger. That was a factor that played into Mason Rudolph's transition. In college, he was great in college. He was a really good college quarterback. He threw 37 touchdowns, I believe that was the number. And in his final year. And in doing so, he was often leading his guys to the right ways. But his guys were often beating one-on-ones. He had James Washington there, who won the Biletnikoff Award his last year there. There are oftentimes his guys were either wide open or, again, college open. There was a defender in the area, but the passing window was easier to hit. When you get to the NFL level, it's not always that way, and the coverages are disguised a bit better. Those are the things that I think that Kenny Pickett's going to have to adjust to. That's because there's going to be a lot more situations where the defenders are close on the receiver he's targeting, and he's going to have to find a way to hit those windows. He might, because I saw him plenty of times hit those windows. And again, when we're talking about disguised coverages, that's something that if you listen to me talk about Kenny Pickett, I've seen him be very used to at the college level. It's a different level at the pros. There's a lot of different complicated things. There's a lot of different blitz looks and coverage looks and disguises that go into the NFL game. But when I was watching him play against teams like Clemson, play against teams like Virginia Tech, Virginia, Wake Forest, over the years, there were a lot of times that teams would throw different things at him and he would recognize it and he'd pick up on it. And it really took until his final year for him to have some weapons who weren't dropping the ball as much. And that allowed him to capitalize on it even more, because his throws weren't just going to the right spot and being dropped. They were being caught and sometimes even expanded upon with big plays afterwards. So again, my thing here with Kenny Pickett, his biggest advantage will be, I think, his ability to process defenses. If he can speed up the process of adapting to the NFL, getting used to the spacing, getting used to the opponent's speed, reaction time, their level of focus, that's going to play a major factor for Kenny Pickett's growth. But again, I don't think it's a given that he's going to be the guy as the starter. I also don't think it's a given that Mitch Trubisky is or Mason Rudolph is. I think this is legitimately going to be a legitimate camp battle. Mike Tomlin even said he does have a chance to start. This is going to be a legitimate camp battle. Mason Rudolph has been the backup on this team. Mitch Trubisky has had a real start, since he was with the Bears 2 years ago, and this is Kenny Pickett's rookie season. We're going to see. I think there's a lot of different ways that this could play out. But again, that's what the Steelers wanted. They wanted to have a quarterback competition in camp. They wanted to see some guys duke it out, see how they pushed each other, and then they'll go from there. But again, also I think it's important to remember all along is what I said going not even before the last season ended when I was talking about it. It's like next season, it's not going to be about the quarterback position. I mean, it's always about the quarterback position because that's the most important position on the field. But That's not going to be the strength of the team. The best quarterback on the Pittsburgh Steelers is going to be the one that takes what's in front of them and makes the fewest amount of mistakes, because the 2022 Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be predicated on defense, running the ball, and having a balanced offense that off of that running the ball. So Kenny Pickett's best chance, don't make the big mistakes. And when they present you the opportunities, you take them, be able to target over the middle of the field. That'll help open up the ground game for Najee Harris. So that's how I feel about that. Now, the last episode we actually did over the weekend, that was sort of one of our bonus episodes, was not about the NFL draft. It was about the move to get Damontae Kazee. Now, flipping to the other side of the field with defense, this I think is a smart move, because Damontae Kazee is going to offer you a solid safety who can jump into the slot on occasion. He has good instincts. He seems to have a good understanding of where to be. His good football IQ, studies the game really well. He's not overly fast. He ran I think a 4.54, I want to say, in his 40-yard dash. I don't have that right in front of me right now, but he's 5'11", so he's not extremely long. But when you watch his tape, he hits hard. He makes plays in the football, and when the ball is around him, he catches it. And that's the factor that Terrell Edmunds really hadn't had much of in his career, even though they both had 2 interceptions last season. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what his role is for the Steelers, because to me, I see his best role either being helping as a slot guy or bumping back to the back end of the defense and playing deep safety with Minkah Fitzpatrick, while Terrell Edmunds comes down, helps against the run, helps against tight ends, and helps against running backs coming out, or just helping in coverage generally over the middle or in the box. But either way, I think it's a decent addition to the safety room and to the defense for what they're going to be trying to do. It also signals to me that maybe the Steelers were actually looking at the safety position in the first round to be the position that they went afterwards, because you saw Lewis Cine and Daxton Hill go get picked later in the first round. Maybe they were looking at the safety position until they saw that, oh, we're going to get our pick of the quarterbacks. We got to go for that, because according to them, Kenny Pickett was worth that first round pick at 20th overall. But again, I think it was a good move to get KZ. And now the question is, what are some other moves that needs to be made at this point moving forward? Because truly, the Steelers do have some money, and they're not done. They still need to add some things. I'll go over 2 of the top options that I think are really important going into this week, as well as a question of a matter of paying a player who's currently on the roster right now. An option is available at 4 p.m. It's going to be the deadline to make an option on a player is at 4 p.m. We'll talk about that in a minute here. But first, I'm going to talk to you guys about Built Bar. Summer is coming. It's May now. And with summer, you're going to need some food on the go. Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you on family vacations. You can throw them in your bags and your kids' backpacks and make sure that everyone has a bar so that they're fueled up for your summer activities. The best part of Built Bars, they're healthy and they're delicious. No more sacrificing delicious food for health. With Built Bar, you can have both. It's easy. All you have to do is go to Built.com and order right now, and they'll have some delivered right to your door. All Built Bars and Puffs bars, which are the new flavors of Built Bars, are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means with Built Bar, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. If you haven't tried the new Built Puffs yet, you're missing out, because everyone's going crazy for them right now. They have different flavors like banana cream pie and churro. And who doesn't want a protein bar that tastes like churro? And again, that one's only 140 calories. Sign me up. If that's not enough flavor for you, you might want to try the mix box, because they have mix boxes that come with 12 different flavors of bars and puffs. Built Bar makes sure that there is something for everyone. And if you want to know what my favorite flavor is, it's double chocolate, because I like to double down on the chocolate on the outside, chocolate on the inside. Those are the best options for me. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to the average candy bar that has 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. There's an obvious option there. So go to Built.com to get all of your favorites right there. And they have all the new flavors coming out every single month. They're all delicious and coming out all the time at Built.com. Again, go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCK15. That's LOCKED15, LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off your next order when you visit Built.com. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. So we're going to talk about all the picks as we go. You guys know I'm going to have the normal guests. I got Tony coming on Wednesday. We hope to have Wes on Tuesday, Josh on Thursday, and Jenna on Friday. And we'll be getting to talk about all the different picks then. But I want to take a step out of, after we've talked about Kenny Pickett and the signing of Damontae Kazee, to look at options that are ahead of the Steelers right now. Now, the first one is the most important. It's the question of Devin Bush's fifth-year option. Now, I've seen a lot of questions about this. A lot of people have said, oh, they're not going to do it. Some people said, oh, they are going to do it. And former Steelers linebacker Vince Williams has been advocating on Twitter for the Steelers to go and give Devin Bush his fifth-year option. The question is, will Devin Bush have a good season? He had a really good first year for a rookie. He had a strong second year before he got injured. And going into his third year, there were NFL GMs and front office people who were saying that Devin Bush would have been one of their votes for the Pro Bowl had he not gotten injured in his second season. But his third season was lacking. He had missed tackles. He wasn't going to the hole, looked confused at times, wasn't the same presence on the field. Now, we've seen workout videos of him now training, and he looks good and agile and all that. But the question is, can it translate to the field? It's a tough question for the Pittsburgh Steelers, because if you don't sign him to a fifth-year option, you're risking him just saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to free agency next year. And if he has a good year this year, you're going to want to keep him in the fold, especially when you sign Miles Jack to a 2-year deal. And that's going to put you in a situation where if you could have both of those guys around for 2 years and they both work well together, you'd want to keep that without having to spend big bucks to do it. But also, adding a fifth-year option is expensive. He's a 10th overall pick, so it's going to cost them some money. So it's a tough question for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We know that Kevin Colbert's done with the NFL draft. I presume that this is going to be one of the last things. And Kevin Colbert did make it clear before the draft. He said, we're not touching the Devin Bush situation until after this is over. But they have until 4 p.m. to do it. So be on the lookout for that. If it was my call, it's tough to say. I've gone back and forth on this. At first, I thought I would. I thought I wouldn't. I'd have to lean still now. I would still lean to say no, and I try to gamble that, hey, you'd be able to work something out with Devin Bush next year anyways. Same way that you work something out with Terrell Edmunds to keep him around. But I think that's a tough question for the Steelers. Only they know how serious his recovery has been. Only they will know how well he will be able to translate back into the game. We'll see how things go. And if it happens, we'll be talking about it definitely on the Tuesday episode here. But what are some of the other needs the Steelers need to address? They already went and got their safety in Damontae Kazee. So now there's at least 3 safeties that you feel comfortable starting with: Terrell Edmunds, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Kazee. You also have Miles Killebrew and Trey Norwood on the roster. They didn't address safety in the draft, so that makes sense there. They also didn't address cornerback, and that's a serious question. Do they go and get another cornerback? And of course, there's the obvious one that everyone's talking about. What's up with Joe Hayden? He's still sitting there in free agency. He was important to you last year, and he's still a guy who could be a leader in the cornerback room. Now, you went and brought back Ahkello Witherspoon. You signed Levi Wallace, so maybe you don't need him, and I would totally understand that. But if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers and you know how injuries go, you also know that you could be down to real quick to it being, Levi Wallace and Cam Sutton and Arthur Maulet being basically your entire cornerback room that you can count on in a minute. So there's a question there. Do you bring back Joe Hayden? Because if you do, then you're going to have to push someone else out of the cornerback room, whether it's James Pierre, Arthur Maulet, Justin Lane, any of those guys. So it'll be interesting to see if they look at the cornerback position at all there. But also, they still have to address the backup running back situation. They didn't really get to do that in the draft. They did bring in an undrafted free agent in Mateo Durant. Durant was a decent running back for Duke. He didn't have great measurables coming out, but he was a guy that basically in the entire Duke offense was based off of in the ACC. Trust me, I was watching them. He was actually pretty decent there, but not decent enough that he's going to be a draft pick. But still, you have to have someone to push Benny Snell or Anthony McFarland if they're not going to be ready. Those are the big questions that I have right now, because you do need a person to be able to spell Najee, because he's going to need times when Najee Harris has to come off the field, get a breather, catch his breath, and get ready to go back out there and be fresh. The Steelers have often had that number 2 running back when they've been at their best. You remember D'Angelo Williams for Le'Veon Bell. You remember Weldy Moore for Willie Parker. Those type of back options can truly help out, again, balance the offense. The question is, who can you go get in free agency? As I see it, though, when we actually had one of our callers, Jared Luzader from Cleveland, Ohio, ask this question before the draft about Tarik Cohen. I didn't get to your questions because we had so many things coming up at the time. And I do want to point out, if you still do have questions, you can do them. I'm pulling them up lately because the draft was insane and I was cramped up with things I had to cover and things I had to talk about. But again, I remind you, you can get your call and your question on this show to be answered at 412-223-6644. Again, that's 412-223-6644, or email LOSteelersTopicBag@gmail.com. Again, that's LOSteelersTopicBag@gmail.com. If you're international, and that's the way to go, so that you avoid the international calling fees, you can just leave a voicemail or excuse me, an audio clip of what you said. So do any of those if you have questions on the show. We will be getting back to the question segments on here. But Jared Luzader brought up a good point with Tarik Cohen. You could use a dynamic back, a different kind of back to spell Najee Harris, a quicker guy, but you need experience either way. You need someone who's going to be used to protecting the quarterback, because that's going to be a big factor for whoever's back there. The Steelers always say, if you're going to be a running back in their system, you better be able to pass protect, because that's a huge part of it. You have to win backs on backers. I'll be intrigued to see who they do add, because I do think they will add somebody. I don't think they're just going to go into camp with just the guys that they have right now. They want another body in that running back room to help with Najee Harris. And again, if it's a solid veteran who knows what they're doing, it gives you a chance. And if Najee Harris ever does get hurt, you have a person that you'd be willing to put in there, and maybe they'd be able to keep up the pace of the offense. But again, we'll see how that plays out. As for other positions, the questions as far as where they could go, maybe they go and get some edge depth, maybe they go get some linebacker depth. But I wonder if they're going to do too much of that, because again, they signed Myles Jack, they kept Robert Spillane. I think that they like the idea of TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Derek Tuska. I also say, and I've said this before, DeMarvin Leal isn't an official outside linebacker, but when you look at his snap percentage, he either lined up over top of or outside of the tackle for 2/3 of his college snaps in his final season with Texas A&M. Not saying that makes him an edge, but does say that. But I am saying the Steelers are going to notice that, and they're going to try to maybe make him a tweener that's going to help more out there to give some spell snaps to keep both TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith clean. But there's still questions as far as who the Steelers could sign in free agency late in this point. I will say that I do think Tyrann Mathieu is out of the picture. If you sign a guy like Kazee, less expensive, 28 years old, you think that he can fit with what you're doing at 5'11". Also, he's a guy that can challenge taller guys, at least run jump with them. So that's at least a factor there. But I do think that, again, this team needs to maybe look at the cornerback room, maybe add to it just to add some insurance in case somebody or somebody's get hurt. I also think that they should be looking at the running back position with the guys that are out there, because Najee Harris does need some backup. Of course, there's a lot more to talk about with the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's George Pickens and where he fits as a wide receiver. A lot of people are saying that he's a feisty one. If you look back, he does have a clip of a really nasty fight that he had one time on the field. He also has the reputation of maybe being an off-season or an off the field problem guy. I think those problems are overstated, but we're going to talk about all of that. Whether it's George Pickens, whether it's Connor Hayward, Cam Hayward's brother joining the team, whether it's DeMarvin Leal, Calvin Austin, all the different options available to the Pittsburgh Steelers. We've got a lot of time to break these down before rookie camp starts. So stay tuned with the Locked On Steelers podcast. We'll keep you up to date with all the updates on the team, new additions, and what is happening with your favorite football team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Either way, let me know how excited you are about this draft class in the YouTube comments. If you're watching it on YouTube, hit me up on @CarterCritiques. Let me know what you feel about this class, and if you feel Kenny Pickett should be the starter on day one, or what his chances will be with Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph in the fold. Thanks again for checking out the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm Chris Carter, your host. We'll be back tomorrow with Wes Euler from Steeler Nation Radio, breaking down more of the picks, and we'll take a closer look at George Pickens and how he fits in with this receiver group, talking more about your Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, follow me on Instagram and Twitter @CarterCritiques. You can watch this show on YouTube. If you're watching this show on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel for all our daily Monday through Friday episodes, where you can also listen to us on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and more. Thanks again for checking us out. I'll be back on your screens and in your ears soon. Hope you have a good Monday and a start to your May.